Episode 5 of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, an episode that makes a very bold change to Tolkien's legendarium and finally sets the pieces moving to war in the southlands. Hey guys, it's Fentony, welcome back to the channel. As you know, we cover all things related to The Lord of the Rings, including Amazon's Rings of Power series, also House of the Dragon, Harry Potter, The Witcher, and much more. And before we start this review, if you enjoy what you see, please consider subscribing, throw a like on the video as well, and why not ring the bell to get notified for all my new videos. But yes, episode 5, and most of the storylines are finally reaching the location of their season 1 endgame. Galadriel and Halbrand and a force of Numenorians have finally set sail, bound to help the low men of the southlands against the orcs. But the southlanders are divided, with many deciding to swear loyalty to Adar in exchange for their lives. Even Bronwyn, who remained defiant, now doubts their chances of survival. She thinks perhaps surrendering is their only hope. The stranger and the harfoots continue their migration onto the location known as the Grove. However, many perils await them, including 3 mysterious figures who seem to be hunting the Meteor Man. And finally in Linden, High King Gil-galad's motives for sending Elrond to Celebrimbor have been revealed, and we get one of the biggest change to Tolkien's lore so far. We have a lot to discuss. But yes, let's start with the harfoots. Nori is teaching the stranger more words, and the friendship is growing. Her family and Poppy have accepted him, whilst the harfoot community as a whole remains wary. One of the female elders blames all their blight on the stranger and suggests to Sadok to remove the wheels of the Brandyfoot cart and be done with them. And guys, the harfoot life kinda sucks, and it can be so brutal. I did enjoy Nori and the stranger's interactions, and of course the wide landscapes of New Zealand are always appreciated. It's a stunning country and a huge part of what brought Peter Jackson's movies to life. We get a short montage of the harfoots' travel on the map, including known places, such as what becomes the Dead Marshes or the maze of rocks that Frodo and Sam met Gollum in. But I do wish more of the harfoot storyline took place on the road. A quick montage is nice, but I'd like to see more of it. In fact, I would like to see the whole storyline so far told on the road, because The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are road movies, and that was a huge part of the appeal, the adventure. 5 episodes in, and I believe the harfoots have been present for all but 1. So they've had 4 episodes, but I think they could have gotten to this in 3. We do get a fight scene involving wolves, and the stranger saves them by slamming his arm on the floor in a very Gandalf you shall not pass moment. But by doing this, his arm is heavily bruised. And I believe this is because he is using his hidden power. He is a Maya, and this form, this mortal form, is designed to limit him. It cannot sustain his power. And my theory is he is a wizard, either Gandalf, Radagast, Saruman, or one of the 2 blue wizards. Not sure which one, even though there's so many nods to Gandalf, it's hard to see past him. And remember that Istari were limited and rarely showed their true power. Gandalf would show glimpses now and then, even more so once he came back as Gandalf the White, but even then he was very reserved in his display of power. Whereas the stranger is very wild and uncontrolled, as seen with the Fireflies, and now with this massive slam. I think he needs to learn to control his powers, to focus them. And perhaps this is where the idea of the wizard staffs come in. A staff would focus the wizard's power, and not cause his mortal body to be damaged. We do see the stranger try to heal himself with ice, but Nori was harmed in the process. We could argue she could have kept her hands to herself, but she's become very protective over her protector. But this is the first time since his arrival she has shown fear. And they're playing up on the idea that the stranger could be either good or bad, something he doesn't even know himself. But yes, I enjoyed the harfoots this week. Poppy's song was sweet. I know it's going to bother many as it features the lines from Bilbo's poem about Aragorn, but I have no complaints. I just wish they moved slightly faster, or done more with the time that was given to them. And we're not really much closer to knowing who the stranger is, but it's setting them up for where they will be in the finale. 3 mysterious figures who I will refer to as the Cult of Morgoth are hunting them. I believe they are loyal to Sauron, they are maybe even searching for him. They might believe the Meteor Man is their Dark Lord. Or they have been tasked with finding the stranger because Sauron believes he is a threat to him, as the stranger has been sent to Middle-earth by the Valar. The main figure is known as the Dweller, and the other 2 are the Ascetic and the Nomad. And on the metal plate we can see the same constellation of stars. so it's very obvious they are connected to the stranger somehow. But I'm getting a very evil vibe to them, from their design and the chanting. Now, Numenor, which should have been the crown jewel of this series, but I think it's the worst storyline. It's not just because Galadriel is my least favourite character, but rather because the greatest kingdom of men is a disappointment, and the plot moves at snail's pace. But now we know that Pharazôn has his own agenda. He's helping the southlands because they will be in debt to them, and they can further their trade and tribute. But there are those that are against the expedition, as they feel they are doing the elf's bidding. And Pharazôn's son Kemen even sabotaged 2 of the 5 ships, bound for Middle-earth. This is clearly the King's Men faction, that look to Pharazôn as their leader. And it's likely, when the Queen Regent is away, Pharazôn will take that opportunity and gain more power, maybe even the scepter of Numenor itself. But like I said, this is almost a filler type episode. I think a lot of time has been wasted, and we get one of the worst training sequences I've ever seen. Galadriel teaches the new recruits how to kill orcs, with not only live swords that could kill people, but very questionable techniques. And I know Hollywood has never been known for its very legit swordmanship, but come on, that was bad. And are they really fitting 100 men on those ships? Isildur does get more time, and he's starting to shine a bit more for me, but there's just far too much going on, whilst at the same time nothing's happening. Elendil, their best character, has been reduced to a bystander since his debut in episode 3, or the end of episode 2 technically. Halbrand and Galadriel are going back and forward, manipulating and using each other. I guess that's interesting, especially when you consider he might be Sauron, but I'm worried they're going to make Sauron a sympathetic character who regrets his actions in the First Age. And I hope that does not happen. I hope it's just one big game of 3D chess for him. And he mentions Galadriel's dagger, and he says sorry for what happened to her brother, as one does, but this might have a deeper meaning, as he was the one who captured Finrod and had him killed. And I'm very fearful Sauron will show remorse. But I hope he's just playing with her. He might even wish to recruit Galadriel, or just use her. But yeah, I'm not a fan of Numenor, but I'm glad they're finally on the water. I just hope the Southlands can hold out, as Adar is about to attack. Rondir suggests days, if not hours, and Numenor is not exactly 5 minutes away. And speaking of the Southlands, they're just waiting for Adar to make his move now. Adar has organised his orcs and built his tunnel. He's after the hilt that Rondir believes is some sort of key. And in the Elven watchtower that once belonged to the men that served Morgoth, we see a statue of the sword. And here's my theory, it will activate the dormant volcano. And when it does, it will transform the land into Mordor. And the smoke that rises from Mount Doom will block out the sun, giving the orcs free reign of Mordor. Something that Adar suggests fairly early in the episode. He can still bathe in the sun because he's not a true orc, but rather a corrupted elf. And he suggests that he will miss the light of the sun when his plan is complete. And this is a very similar device to one of Sauron's plans, that he used to allow his troops to march with haste to Minas Tirith in the Third Age. But as for Adar himself, are we any closer to knowing who he is? Waldreg believes he could be Sauron, and even says that, and Adar seems offended, who attacks the old man and forces him to kill Rowan to prove his loyalty. He's either offended, he hates Sauron, or as in the books, he's disgusted at the old man for using the Dark Lord's name. Because Sauron goes by many names, but he does not permit his followers to speak or write his true name. It makes them fear him more, and makes him feel like a god. And it's kind of the same idea as Voldemort. The fear of the name only increases fear of the thing itself. I feel we are closer to learning the truth about the hilt, and we're hours or days away from an attack. Arondir is the only warrior. Even Bronwyn starts to doubt her chances, and even questions her decision not to surrender. But how long can they hold out before Numenor comes, with only 3 ships and 300 men? Can they make a difference? Especially if one of their warriors is the Dark Lord himself. But yes, finally Linden and the secret of mithril, the main talking point of this episode. Elrond has brought Durin back to meet High King Gil-galad and Celebrimbor, who hosts a banquet for the Dwarven Prince. And they go back and forward, trying to play mind games. I did find the table gag rather funny, but some of the dialogue from Durin, including almost swearing, that does not belong in Tolkien. But guys, I'm not a fan of Gil-galad, and I am unsure how we're supposed to root for this guy in the War of the Last Alliance. Of course, he'll go on a character arc, he's going to learn from his mistakes, but in the books, he was completely against anything to do with Anatar. But on the show, he is likely desperate, maybe even being manipulated. But yes, it was revealed that Gil-galad and Celebrimbor wanted Elrond to go to Khazad-dûm to win over Durin and bring back mithril. It turns out the elves know all about it, and they know its fabled history. It turns out the elven realms are dying. Some sort of blight has infected the great tree of Linden, which we saw at the arrival of the comet. But it actually happened before the comet's arrival, and it soon will spread and become worse. And the elves will have to abandon Middle-earth or face mortality. And if they do this, it will give evil the chance to take over. And this is why Celebrimbor needs to build his tower before spring. And they wish to fashion mithril into some sort of power to bathe the elves and their lands in the last remaining light of the two trees of Valinor, the Silmarils. But of course the three jewels were lost long ago. One of them was thrown into the sea, the other a fiery chasm, and the other one is a star in the sky. But on the show, one of them was placed in a tree on top of the Misty Mountains, above Khazad-dûm. An elf with a heart as pure as Manwë pours his light into the tree to protect it from a Balrog who pours his hatred into the tree to destroy it. The tree gets struck by lightning and creates mithril in the mountain below. Gil-galad says that mithril is both pure and light as good, whilst also strong and unwielding as evil. Mithril contains both forces of good and evil, and Gil-galad and Celebrimbor believe they can use the traces of the light of Valinor inside the metal to heal and preserve the elves and the realms. The traits that are shared by the three elven rings of power. And you know where this is going. The rings will be forged using mithril. Elrond suggests the story itself might be untrue, and there's so many theories they're all being manipulated by Annatar, who has perhaps poisoned the tree himself. So yes, I'm glad Elrond didn't just betray Durin, but of course this plan leads to the Rings of Power, and likely the dwarfs digging too greedily and too deep. And that Balrog that fought on top of the mountain is that Durin's Bane, who is now asleep down in the mithril mines, feeding off the energy of the light of Valinor and the evil inside the ore. It is a big change when it comes to the lore of mithril, and it does add a whole new factor into why the elves created the Rings of Power. But yes, very interesting episode. As a standalone, probably one of the better ones, but it doesn't fix the core problems. The story and the writing are weak. I just don't think they have enough material for 8 episodes, so they've stretched it out. 5 episodes in, they could have done this in 1 or 2 less. But with 3 episodes left, we're getting towards the real important beats and the reveals. And I am interested to see what happens next, but I am rather disappointed with this show. But guys, make sure you post your thoughts. We have 2 new previews for the next episode, including one that focuses on Sauron, so we can talk about that in the weekend. And of course, House of the Dragon will soon come around. So if you like that stuff, make sure you subscribe. But yes guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.